sit back, enjoy, yeah, we got a lot of work, and I'm excited to tell you about it. So here we are, summer 2022 projects and beyond. I am still council coordinator here, MidCoast Watersheds Council, and excited to kind of take you through a look at our in-stream projects this summer, get a kind of glimpse at some of our work we're working on in the meantime to design more projects, and then kind of give you a look forward at what the council has coming in the next few years with some good news we got within the last 2 weeks. So here's our roadmap for the evening. I'll give you a real brief little history of the council. Most of you know the story about how we formed and what we've been doing the last 26, 27 years or so. We'll look at 4 projects we have and we're working on with partners as well here for the summer. That's a Mill Creek Alsea large woody debris project, Tributary reconnection project on Bummer Creek, which is also in the Alsea Basin, Pool Slough, LWD, and LMZ, and I'll explain what those mean here soon for folks who don't know the acronyms. And a project we're working on with the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians up on Little and Big Rock Creek, another large woody debris project up there. So all the while during this pretty busy summer season, we're also working on some technical assistance design projects. So that's working directly with engineers and other stakeholders to design, next summer and the summer beyond's restoration projects. I'll touch briefly on the other ongoing work that council does in the summer, which is around planting maintenance, around kind of maintaining the trees that we've planted in the past. I'll be brief on that because at our next meeting in September, we'll have Trevor and Tom and our summer intern James kind of do a presentation. And Trevor's going to talk a lot about all the work that goes into making sure these trees are successful and get to free to grow status. And we don't just plant a tree and walk away. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure that tree makes it when we're working in these areas. So touch on that briefly, and then that look ahead is mostly going to be talking about what's called a focused investment partnership, or FIP. And I will save that big news for a little bit later. So here we are, MidCoast Watersheds Council. Again, brief history. The initial launch started public meetings with 2 of our founding board members, with Fran Recht and Paul Engermeyer, who were involved all the way back then. The Watershed Council kind of movement really came out of this Oregon plan for salmon and watershed in the late 90s, when a lot of the salmon populations crashed on the coast and really had a big effect on the fisheries and the tribal importance of the species. Everyone is impacted by that. So the state of Oregon kind of divvied up the geography into 50 plus watershed councils and set up a kind of a funding mechanism with the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, which was originally the governor's Watershed Enhancement Board, and has since been changed to OWEB. And the idea is really just to for these watershed councils to be the glue between all these state, federal, local agencies, the landowners, all these stakeholders, private landowners, industrial timber, all the folks that live and work in our area, get us all speaking the same language, point in the right direction, and work on restoring the health of our streams and our watersheds. We're a little bit different than most watershed councils that we cover multiple basins. We have kind of 5 larger systems from the Salmon River up north, Siletz River, Yaquina River, Alsea River, and the Yachats in the south. But then also all these smaller direct ocean tributaries right along the coast, including Beaver Creek, and then some larger systems down south at 10 Mile Creek and a couple big creeks and some of those areas. So a lot of councils are just one basin, or up in the Nehalem, there's an upper Nehalem and a lower Nehalem. We cover a lot of turf, almost 1 million acres total. One way to look at it is it's job security. There's no shortage of work to do out there, and we got a lot of ground to cover and on the mid-coast here. Really briefly, just the types of restoration projects we do. I have another presentation that I put together that kind of goes over each of these and kind of goes over why we do it and kind of the thinking behind the work we do. And I'll save kind of most of that, kind of just touch on a couple of things as we go related to the projects for our work this summer. But, we do culvert replacements, removals, upgrades, a lot of large wood placement, the vegetation management I mentioned, living with beaver projects, encouraging landowners where they can tolerate beaver on their property. They do a lot of good. They do our work better than we can ourselves. Stream more kind of, bigger projects include stream realignment, big floodplain reconnection projects, and estuary work, which we've talked about with some of our recent projects here in the Aquina and some other projects. And of course, we do our fair share of monitoring as well to kind of assess what we're doing and if it's meeting the goals of the work, and learn from any mistakes we make and learn from the good stuff as well, and make sure we're doing right and kind of accomplishing what we want to do as we're completing these projects. Most of the work this summer is that large wood placement idea, and kind of just real briefly want to talk about what wood does in a stream and why we do this large wood placement. And kind of the backdrop for this is most of the MidCoast streams, they are dominated by sandstone geology, so Tyee sandstone formation. This is real kind of crumbly, terrain. It's easily erodible. Upper portions of the Alsea and especially the upper Silettes have more volcanic intrusion and more rock and cobble. But most of our basins are sandstone dominant, and the sandstone, like I said, just erodes really easily. That bigger rock and cobble in some areas acts as real grade control and slows the water down and spreads the water out. But most of these systems need just big chunks of wood, whole trees, big logs to really be ideal for habitat. And these logs, they slow the water down. Water falls over them and creates scour, and that creates deeper pools for fish to hang out in. These pools, they catch all the leaves and needles that are falling in, and that detritus settles down instead of just washing out of the system, and that forms the base of the food chain that then makes a bunch of food for these fish. So historically, our whole coast range had big trees everywhere, on the hill slopes, in the creeks, everywhere. We're obviously working from a very different landscape now. There was efforts all the way up in the 1980s with some thinking that these log jams or structures were fish passage barriers, that they were hiring crews to actually clear this wood out to hopefully get the fish up higher. In reality, any one log jam can become a fish barrier, but it's evolved over thousands of years to get up through here, and we know these fish need these logs and these complex structures. Pretty much what always rings in my head is the advice of Wayne Hoffman, our former council coordinator, of if you're looking at a stream and it looks really messy with a bunch of wood and piles of rocks and brush and it looks messy, that's the habitat. Messy equals habitat. And that's what we're trying to do, kind of get in there and mess it up a little bit with this wood. So our first project that we're working on with large woody debris is up on Mill Creek. Mill Creek is one of those creeks, mill, the name is, there's a Mill Creek in just about every basin, and there's a couple Mill Creeks in some of the basins. So that's why we always put the Mill Creek Alsea. This one's up just west of town, the town of Alsea, up Vernon Road. Mill Creek Park is down at the bottom of the system there, a popular fishing spot. Our partners on this project are BLM, Bureau of Land Management, the Forest Service, Benton County Parks, and for a portion of the tree harvest, we actually worked up on Mary's Peak and had some volunteers from the Mary's Peak Alliance help us out with traffic control and work up there, which was a new group we worked with, we haven't worked with often. This project was funded from a stewardship grant from the Forest Service, about $77,000. BLM put in an extra $10,000 into a grant to support some timber harvest for this project. and put in a big amount of in-kind staff time for all the layout, design, permitting, and all the work. They really shouldered the load on this project up on Mill Creek. This doesn't include, they also contributed all the wood, which I'll talk about, which is a huge in-kind donation as well, the value of those logs. And we didn't have to buy any logs for this project. That was all from BLM, and we'll talk about that briefly. And then we have used our MidCoast's OWEB salvage log grant to move these logs to the site from wherever they were harvested, and to the tune of about $8,000. So this is a part of a bigger project, a kind of phased project. It's going to be kind of 2 or 3 phases over the next 5 years. This first phase is just focused on BLM ownership and Forest Service ownership in the basin. And the goals of this wood placement are really to, again, create that stream complexity, that messiness that means good habitat, and really improve the salmonid spawning and rearing habitat up this basin. So here, just Alsea here. On the left is the aerial image, and you can see the green dots are everywhere we're proposing to put a wood structure. The right is the ownership map, so you can see the very bottom chunk is owned by Forest Service. It's actually the site known as the Alsea Guard Station, which is managed by Benton County Parks, but the land is still owned by the Forest Service. And then upstream, that ONC property is the BLM property that will be doing a lot of treatment, about 11 wood structures up on that property. And we're hoping to work a couple different phases with the private landowners in between these over the next few years. We've got a couple on board and working on the rest of them. And then we're also working up that Beatty Creek tributary, and I'll talk about those phases a bit later. So we got out in the stream, and our branch manager, Tahoma, said, yep, it needs some more wood. So we said, okay, Tahoma, we'll go ahead and put some more wood in here. But really, we assess these streams. We rely on a lot of ODFW data of spotting surveys and AQI to know, what streams are lacking in wood. This is our partner, Tony, as we were looking at the Forest Service property, and you can see from the image, really beautiful looking streams, some good cobble and gravel, good looking, decent looking spawning habitat. Pretty good riparian cover, some bigger trees, big conifers, alder and maple there, but really just a complete lack of large wood and big, what we call key pieces. That key piece is a size thing. So if we're putting wood in a 20-foot stream, a key piece is going to be twice the width of that stream. And what we mean by key piece is it's big enough in diameter and long enough to be persistent in the stream. If we put it in, it's not just going to float out on its first big flow. So we have an idea where we want to work with wood, and then it takes some work to walk up these streams and assess. This is Tony kind of eyeing where we can put logs and where we can keep logs and kind of keep them in place and make them do a lot of good. And what we see in these systems, this is one alder log, one whole tree that fell in the creek, and just this one tree is doing a lot of good. It's split the channel. It's created a little messiness. You can see that cobble and gravel kind of falling out behind it because it's slowing down the water at that point. We key in on these kind of places where, where natural logs have fallen in, are doing some good. And then our goal is to get an infusion of wood into this to get more good out of that, and really get that complexity and that kind of spread out stream, slowed down water, and increase that at these sites. This is further up in that upper section up on the BLM property. Again, a single log across the creek has held a bunch of gravel back, keeping that gravel in the system, making it available for spawning when the flows come up and the fish run up these rivers. This has created a little scour pool that has created a 3-foot deep hole that we found. We took a look and took a little GoPro image of it and saw up to 20 coho fry hanging out in this little pool just because of this one log. So again, we'll key in, put some more logs in here, and kind of just boost the habitat as much as we can in this decently intact system. This is kind of up above. You can see the creek's getting a bit smaller. This is up above where we've proposed wood. but it's a really good sign because this is what we call coarse woody debris. And this is all actually from an ice storm. I think it was about 3 years ago that, coated a bunch of alders with ice and they fell into the stream. And when we're doing these wood projects, we use big conifer material. So mostly cedar, fir, and spruce. Those are going to last the longest if you get them in the stream. Hardwoods like alder and maple and oak, and even conifers like hemlock and shore pine, they don't last as long in the stream. So when we're going in and putting wood in, we try to use that material that's going to last as long as possible. But we also take advantage of situations like this coarse woody debris. You can kind of see it's breaking up a little bit. It's doing some good for now. But if we get some big wood down below it, as this coarse material moves downstream, it'll get pushed up against our logs and really kind of build these complex structures and spread the water out across the floodplain. And then we know that's what the fish want to do, and we will let the fish guide us in making their habitat for them. BLM has been a great partner on this and many other projects as far as large woody debris resources. Tony, who you saw there, he has been able to kind of stick his nose in a lot of these BLM timber sale areas. And actually, before they go out to a timber sale, we've been able to work with a contractor with an excavator to go up and actually tip trees from kind of the right-of-way areas and maybe some unmarketable timber that's in the way that we can utilize and use for our project. And we were able to tip 60 trees about a half a mile up in the system before a timber sale took place. And this is James, our summer intern, doing the impossible task of trying to count logs in a giant log pile. We made it a challenge for him in his second week here. So that was a portion of the log. We tipped about 60 trees, and we usually get 2 to 3 logs, 40, 50 foot length logs from each tree. And then the Mary's Peak Road harvest, there was an old overlook called the Ridgeview Overlook or Lady Bird Johnson Overlook. In present day, it was not much of an overlook because all the trees had grown up, and it used to have a view of the Cascades across the way, but all you see now is trees. So BLM wanted to open that back up at this turnout and make it an overlook again. It was originally just going to be a coarse woody debris project, but they dropped the trees down the hill, open up the view. But Tony stuck his nose in there and said, hey, we can use these trees. And we were able to cut 110 trees that were, just going to be cut down and left there. And instead cut them down, yarded them up the hill, up to the landing over the last 3 weeks, and got them moved out to our project site to make some fish habitat out of them. So some kind of innovative thinking and good thinking, supportive thinking from BLM to get us this great wood material that's going to make this project a success. This project's set to start Saturday. We bumped it up. We're in the middle of our in-water work period right now, which is usually the summer months. And in this system, it's July 1st to August 31st. We usually most of these areas have occupied murrelet habitat, so we have to wait until August 6th to start a lot of these projects, so we don't have an impact with our loud equipment on murrelets. So usually we're starting a bunch of projects right around August 6th, which is when those restrictions end, when the murrelets have fledged their nests and are kind of out of the area and get to work to improve some habitat. Next project we're going to talk about is up just up the road, up Alsea Deadwood Highway from Mill Creek on Bummer Creek. Partners again, great partners from BLM on this, and a private landowner along Haynes Road. And OWEB paid for the design for this project all the way back in 2017. And we've been working to get it funded and finally have all the funding in place, and are waiting on one last permit that hopefully will come through. And we'll be able to get this tributary repair work done. We have another grant from BLM for this for $50,000, another big chunk of in-kind staff time from BLM to help us with the permitting and layout and on the ground implementation. And we're also utilizing that salvage log grant again to the tune of $3,000 to get logs to the site for the project. So the goals for this, it builds on previous efforts in this property and in this basin of riparian planting and fencing. And we're really trying to get fish passage restored to the small little tributary system to Bummer Creek, and a big push to do juvenile access, because we know the system has really good rearing habitat. it stays cold. It actually gets up into BLM headwaters, which is old growth and has really cold water. So all of our main stems, we know they warm up. They're all on the 303D list for temperature. So opening up access to all these small little tribs with colder water is a really important goal. It's not just getting the adults up and through, it's allowing these juveniles to find this cold water, and repairing culverts and fixing head cuts is a big part of that. This just gives you an idea of this whole kind of basin-wide effort. We're here on this, I guess I can do it here. On this property here, we've also worked on the adjacent 120 acres over the last 3 years to improve habitat there. And then over the last 15 years have done a lot of large wood placement, culvert replacements. Starker has been a partner up in these upper areas to complete some of this work. Some other timber companies we've worked with as well, and some BLM higher up, but really a whole basin effort to kind of fix all the issues that we see, fence off riparian areas, do a lot of planting, restore fish passage, and focus efforts in a basin to kind of get more bang for our buck and within a given system. This one, I apologize, it's a little hard to see, but what we're working on is this small tributary system, and there's a series. So the head cut is here. A head cut, you can see in the picture here, essentially sandstone geology again in Bummer Creek, doesn't have large wood in the creek, or not enough of it, and Bummer Creek is incised or down cut, so it's eroded away, kind of lost its floodplain connection. And if you imagine the main stem down 20 feet from where it used to be, all these tributaries have to get down to match that elevation with their water. So they either create a big waterfall right off the edge into the main stem, or what usually happens is a head cut. So that starts to erode back. We call it unzipping back, and it creates, at some point it'll hit something, and it hit these intact ash trees, and stops, and you get about a 5-foot waterfall, which maybe an adult salmon could jump up and get into the system. But when we're trying to get fish up there, we know juvenile fish can only jump about 5 or 6 inches. So that becomes a full barrier for juvenile fish to be able to get up into these ponds, which we know there's good habitat. If they were able to get past this head cut, they then would hit this culvert, which was poorly installed and not fish passable. So our work out here is to fix that head cut and replace that culvert with a fish passage culvert, to get this system kind of reconnected for the fish, if you will. This property, as I said, we planted back in 2016. You can see the before picture in the upper left there, and the after picture. Trees growing really well after 6 years of planting out there. Another shot here, open field, was mostly blackberry that the owner had just been mowing back, and now we've got a nice riparian forest growing along there, and we'll finally hopefully get this head cut repair piece done, and culvert work done, and walk away from this property feeling pretty good about the work we've done out there. Here's our engineered designs. These are kind of tough to read, but just gives you, these are essentially our blueprints for the work we're going to do. And this is where we worked with engineers with some funding from OWEB to design this. They do modeling to know how big that culvert has to be. The head cut repairs actually will make a kind of series of log steps, if you will, that'll kind of secure the area, make sure it's not eroding anymore, but then kind of make a series of little 5-inch steps to get up that, former 5-foot waterfall. Will kind of spread out that gradient and make a little, kind of natural fish ladder, if you will, to be able to get fish up into these seasonal and perennial wetlands and really good habitat upstream. This is what it looks like on paper. Hopefully we'll get that last permit and show you what it looks like in real life here pretty soon. And here's our new culvert. You can very roughly see kind of 3 cylinder type shapes here. That's the 3 side-by-side culverts that are not fish passable, and we'll be able to get fish through this 10-foot box much better than 3 little 1-foot culverts. And again, hopefully we're able to get our last permit and get this one on the ground. We're heading down now, down to the Yaquina. This is in Pool Slough. Pool Slough is one of the most intact kind of tidal wetland areas in the Yaquina, mostly in ownership of Van Eck Forest, managed by Pacific Forest Trust. Some Forest Service property upstream, and the Wetlands Conservancy owns major portions of the marsh area as well. So those are our partners for this project, along with ODF&W. We have a grant from the Pacific Marine Estuarine Fish Habitat Partnership, or PMEP, for $56,000, and this complemented and matched a Forest Service stewardship grant that the bulk of the work was done last summer to remove an old county road grade that went through the marsh and kind of cut off flow of the high tide, and we removed that road grade, and we're following up this summer with putting large wood and these LMZs, and I'll tell you what LMZs are here in a second. The goals of this one, again, increase resilience to sea level rise and climate change in these tidal marshes, establish some tidal marsh vegetation where we think, or we've modeled where future tidal wetlands are going to be, and restoration of the scrub, shrub, and spruce swamp habitat. About 6% of the area it used to cover in the Aquina estuary. So just dramatically different from where it used to be. And we're trying to get back to restoring these ecotypes that are really rare now and really important. We know they're really important for fish. So these LMZs stand for landward migration zones. And this kind of goes back to a project that MidCoast did, completed with contractors in 2017 to model the sea level rise, 6 different sea level rise scenarios on the Oregon coast, and kind of see what that does to our tidal wetlands and how these tidal wetlands will move. And that's what we did, was map these future tidal wetlands for these different sea level scenarios. We did this for, just not just the mid-coast, but all 23 major estuaries south of the Columbia along the coast, and then provided these tools to watershed councils and ODFW and all these other groups working in these areas, so they can have an idea of what's coming in these areas, and start to do like we're doing, to start to work to restore and build resilience to sea level rise in these future tidal wetland areas. This is a just quick schematic, and I just threw this in to kind of help explain it a little bit. But as you move left to right in this image, you have your kind of normal high tide line here, and everything below that is mostly mud flat. You transition up a couple feet in elevation and you get into low marsh and high marsh, and those are mostly grass and sedge type species that are able to grow there. You take another couple feet up in elevation, and that's where you enter the scrub, shrub, and spruce swamp, kind of forested tidal wetlands is the other thing we call these areas. And this low marsh, high marsh, scrub, shrub, and spruce swamp are what we call, that's our current tidal wetland area. As sea level rises, you can imagine these will get inundated more area will be kind of reverted to mudflat, and everything kind of has to move up slope or up river. And that's what these landward migration zones are, these possible future tidal wetlands. Most of our systems right along the coast are very mountainous, so there's not a lot of room to move up slope. You're kind of just moving up the margin a bit. What we see is a lot of these will move up river, and that's what this modeling exercise did, is look at, this is the Aquina here. The blue is and areas that are currently open water or mud flat, so kind of in that below high tide range, and then these yellow areas are where we think these marshes and forested tidal wetlands will shift, and this is all based on 4.7 feet of sea level rise, which was a fairly conservative estimate of what could happen by 2021, or sorry, 2100. So here's Pool Slough down in the bottom of the picture, and we're working in this kind of long arm, and that's again that kind of upslope, upriver movement of where we expect these tidal wetlands to move to. So we started this wood placement in 2021 in the area. This is some drone imagery we got of our wood placed out in the sites. This is during a king tide in December of 21. So after we placed the wood, you can see the water's getting up high, and we're really using these king tides, happen in November, December into January in the winter, as kind of a glimpse of what future high tides will, future normal high tides will be. So this was great to get some drone imagery of showing these logs, and most of these logs are fairly large diameter, but smaller chunks. So they're not great for what we want when we want to put them in streams, because they're just a little too short. And all these logs were actually salvaged from the Echo Mountain fire, working with PacifiCorp when they did a bunch of hazard tree clearing. We were able to salvage about 1,500 logs from that effort. And they're not perfect for stream work, so we found a use for them in these estuary areas. And we're trying to just set up these nurse logs, because all these areas, again, historically would have just been full of wood from all the big trees that fell in the river upstream and got, set up on the marsh during a high tide. We're really trying to replicate that and kind of build these almost elevated platforms for these trees and become nurse logs. And we're kind of experimenting a little bit with that, which is kind of fun. This is Derek from ODFW and Trevor drilling some holes in these logs. We think the fire effect on them might help them kind of start to rot a little bit quicker and break down. And then we're trying to grow, trees on these. You've seen a nurse log and how it rots and forms moss, and then little shrubs start growing on it and spruce start growing on it. And we're drilling some holes in and packing it with mud. And we've collected some spruce seed from salty areas, and we're spreading that out. And long term, it'll do it itself. But we're kind of trying to push a little bit and give it a little bit of help and doing some experimenting with these nurse log creation, which is a kind of fun thing to do. So our did a big chunk of wood placement, about 200 logs in 2021. We're going to follow up with about the same effort this season. Here's Pool Slough, and again, we've mapped these areas. All these kind of green shaded areas are these future tidal wetland areas. The red is Wetlands Conservancy ownership, and then all this area up here is Van Eck Pacific Forest Trust ownership, as well as Flusher Slough up in this area. So the 2021 placement was really focused in this area. We're going to be working a little further upstream in this area this year, and then trying to access some of these Wetlands Conservancy properties and get some logs into those areas as well. So this one is not an in-stream project, so we don't have to squeeze it all during the summer, but we want to do it during a dry month. So we're aiming towards September to get this work done and have all our logs staged there in Toledo, ready to go out to this project here in the next month or so. Last big project of the summer is up on Little and Big Rock Creek, where the tribe CTSI are the lead. We got received a grant to the Coho Business Plan, which is an effort of the Wild Salmon Center, NOAA, OWEB, and a bunch of other partners to really move the needle in coho restoration of the slets. And we received this grant and moved it on to the tribe to complete this work. That grant for phase 1, which will occur this summer, is $79,000. And we have another $240,000 coming for phase 2, which we're going to be putting wood in other private properties over the next two to 3 years. Use our salvage log grant to move logs out to the site with the tribe, and that Echo Mountain recovery funding. Some of these logs, some of our larger logs that we were able to get from that, are going to this project for the summer. Similar goals of stream complexity and that salmonid spawning habitat, lamprey habitat, freshwater mussels, all if we're doing stuff that's salmon, it's helping a lot of other species as well. Tahoma took a look up there and she said, yep, this needs some more wood too. So we'll follow her direction again there. This is all up. Some of you may know it as the Logston Hatchery site. It's the tribal hatchery there upstream from Logston in the Salette system. You can see some riparian planting they've done over the years there to try to stabilize that bank and get some shade in some of these areas. Beautiful stream, really rocky, and Rock Creek, obviously. But again, complete lack of large wood in the system. Really needs just a input of wood to hold more of this gravel here, create more complexity. This is looking a little too simple to be really good spawning habitat, a little too clean. So we need to get in there, throw some logs in there, mess it up a little bit, and the salmon will be happy. This is downstream. Getting a little egg now, I think. Yep. Hold on, I'm going to stop my video just for 1 second to try to get this going again. Here we go. This is downstream on Rock Creek proper, so just below the Little Rock and Big Rock confluence. This is kind of the bottom end of the project. This is pretty big water, so we need some big logs to make this work. We're really relying on Stan Van Wettering and the tribe. They've been doing some main stem selettes, so very big water log placements, and they're going to try some techniques that they've learned from that effort up on this system. And you can see just a really one log in this whole stretch, and there should be, state and federal benchmarks for how many logs should be in a certain section. We're trying to reach those benchmarks to really improve the habitat up there. So that's it for the big projects for the summer, the on-the-ground projects. All the while we're doing this field work, we're also working on technical assistance design projects. So we're contracting with engineers, getting a grant, contracting with engineers to do designs. And most of the projects I talked about had some kind of design element from working with engineers. The few that we're working on right now are on Lower Drift Creek up in the Siletz, and that's up on the Siletz National Wildlife Refuge. I'll talk about that effort briefly. We're about to kick off an effort back up near the town of Alsea called the Honey Grove Oxbow, which I'll show you a little map of. And then there's been a big infusion of fish passage money from ODFW, kind of short-term drought recovery funding. And we've been grabbing a bunch of grants to do a bunch of designs for culverts up on Beatty Creek, which is that tributary to Mill Creek, Alsea I mentioned, and a long list, about 15 BLM culverts in the upper Alsea Basin that we're partnering with BLM to get designed. And the big push right now is there's a lot of money floating around from the infrastructure package, from recovery funding. It's kind of a great time to be a council coordinator because there's just money coming in every direction. But the effort here is to get as many projects designed or in quote unquote shovel ready. And the more shovel ready projects we have, the more infrastructure money we can, write grants for and get a bunch of money here invested in the MidCoast to get a bunch of fish passage barriers fixed and other work done to really take advantage of all the kind of flush money that's coming through right now. So these aren't quite as exciting as these big projects we're putting on the ground because we're just, working on paper at this point. But the Lower Drift Creek tidal restoration design process has been going on for about 18 months, almost 2 years now. We're working in the refuge on 3 refuge tracks, Kangas, Schaefer, and Watson. And it's really been a combined effort of Lincoln Soil Water Conservation District, Salmon Drift Creek Watershed Council, ourselves, the refuge, the tribe, and also just all the neighbors in the area. So a lot of the work that goes into these design projects is obviously to design a project to improve habitat for salmon or shorebirds or other things, other target species. But a lot of the modeling is to kind of do our due diligence and make sure we're not negatively affecting private property around these refuge tracks or these other properties we're working on. And through this kind of design process, we've really engaged with the locals. We've had a series of 3 meetings, 2 of them virtually because of the Zoom world we live in right now. But one actually we were able to get out in the field and got good turnout from the locals. So they're letting us know, they know where the flooding happens in this area. They know when it happens. We get that input and we kind of build that into our model and get their input. And they've actually been kind of consulted through this whole design process to make sure they're being heard and their concerns are being heard. And the end result of this is not a project or something that is going to negatively affect any of the private properties around the refuge tracks there. So a lot of different funding for this one. We had to use the Lincoln Soil Water Conservation District Stakeholder Engagement Grant to kick us off. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Fish Passage Program did some direct contracting for the kind of first steps of the engineering work. And then we have another NOAA Wild Salmon Center grant and a National Fish and Wildlife Foundation grant to complete the design. That NOAA grant, $157,000. We're not going to be using all that for design, and that's nice to have the flexibility. Anything that's left after we spend, I think we'll spend about $50,000 of that. The rest of that money will be able to use for the implementation of this project, which if we stay on track, and we're about 60% designs right now and working with the engineers to get that to final, most of this work would be on track for next summer. And if I do a presentation next summer, this is the one we'll be talking about as far as the big on the ground work, hopefully, if all goes to plan. Back up to the Alsea Basin. This is an interesting, really cool project called we're calling the Honey Grove Oxbow. We're going to kick this off in September. This is more funding from that ODFW Fish Passage Drought Recovery Fund. about $162,000 design project. So it's going to take a lot of modeling and a lot of engineering work, and that's not cheap. So essentially, this is the blue line kind of moving through here. Let me get on the right screen. The blue line is the North Fork Alsea here. This is actually the town of Alsea downstream. Alsea Deadwood Highway, you can see is this white linear feature on the right or on the left. You can see these elevation, the yellow is a little bit lower than the green. And you can see a clear old channel here, and it's probably an old, either, the old main stem channel or an old side channel, and there's some flood relief channels, so there's been some connection. You can see this kind of oxbow that's formed. See, again, kind of messy, spread out channel is what we want to see compared to a, just canal running through a field. So at some point this was cut off, and the locals tell us that in the late 80s, there was a big debris flow that blocked off this upstream end, and the downstream end may have been affected before that to facilitate farming in the area, or some other historic use of the area. But essentially, this is now cut off to fish, and this feature all the way along here is about 1 mile total. So if we're able to reconnect this and remove some of this fill and get some more flow into this, it still actually fills up currently. Just from underground flow and moving through the gravel under the ground, that this holds water during the winter, and it would be great for fish habitat, but the fish are cut off because of these kind of plugs and maybe this landslide or whatever it was up on this side. So our goal is to build a project here, design a project to get more flow into this channel. Our goal is to not make this the main stem. We want to keep the main stem there, but what we really want to do is just when that main stem comes up, we want to engage this side channel some more, and this side channel will run a lot slower. We'll put wood in there too, and as part of the design to slow the water down, and it just gives these fish that are hanging out in the main stem in the North Fork Alsea, gives them a spot to hang out during higher flow and kind of flood conditions, so they don't just get washed downstream. They can come hang out in this channel, do some rearing. There's a nice pond here. And then once this kind of starts to, the flood waters recede, they're able to get back and get back into the main stem or hang out in here until the next flood. And really going to be a cool project. We have working with one major landowner that owns almost all this 400 acres, and have some great partners that we're working up in the Alsea Basin to get this project done. So almost done here, don't worry. Fisk Passage, culvert designs, I mentioned we've got a lot of money. A design phase, not much to see right now, but there will be soon. One more big project with BLM. We've got a list of 15 culverts we want to try to get designed. And that's going to start with a chunk of about almost or $500,000, $504,000. And we're going to try to get as many designed, again, just to get as many shovel ready as possible and get some more projects on the ground and take advantage of all this money flying around us. The Beatty Creek culverts, that's an ODFW grant for $27,000 for that to work with Weyerhaeuser and ODFW to get a bridge to replace a failing culvert and replace another culvert with a box culvert. And then Parker and Racks Creek are two BLM culverts up in the upper Alsea. We went on this tour of these 15 culverts with BLM along with ODFW, and those were two that we separated out of this MidCoast Aquatic Species Passage Survey, and are going to get the design funded through the ODFW drought recovery money. And that's about, not final yet, but probably going to be around $80,000. So money flying everywhere. We're pointing it in the right direction to get a bunch of work done. Meanwhile, all the summer long, while we're working on big projects, while we're working on technical design projects, we're also doing a lot of vegetation management. And this is the kind of unknown, somewhat unknown work of what we do after we plant a tree, all the work that goes into that. We do this in wetland areas, riparian areas. We do some upland work. Big goal is conifer establishment, getting those trees that are going to grow big, shade the stream, 200 years from now fall into the stream and provide all that habitat benefit. 50 to 300 year time frames. We don't get much instant gratification with this vegetation management work, but we are learning a lot more about the carbon storage picture too, and how much the work we do in these riparian areas can help with carbon sequestration, and how much of the kind of global carbon picture we're kind of knocking off with the tree plant we're doing. So Just a quick look here. This is an old project up in the upper Yaquina. Pre-project here of a reed canary grass monoculture. The folks taking a look, kind of saying, hey, what are we going to do here? And this is the same site 9 years later. Really quick growing cottonwood trees, filled up that reed canary grass pasture, and are putting a lot of shade onto the stream, and long term will help build that complexity. So again, not going to talk about this a bunch because Trevor's going to be teed up to do this next in September, to kind of go over what we do and how much work goes into working on these planting projects. But this gives you an idea of the amount of effort and amount of work that MidCoast and our partners are doing right now on North Beaver, South Beaver, Bummer Creek, Little Lobster Creek, Big Creek, Ernest Creek, and Sealy Creek. Total about 138 acres of maintenance and from past plantings on 15 plus properties. So I'll stop there and let Trevor pick that up next month. Oh, my slide got cut off. Sorry about that. So last step here, looking ahead, busy summer, but we're always kind of keeping an eye to the future. This focused investment partnership I mentioned, we applied with the Oregon Central Coast Estuary Collaborative, or OCCEC. I am sorry about that got cut off. I'll fix that for the next time. We applied back in January, had about a 7-month process where we got interviewed by OWEB, and there was a couple different review teams meetings and board meeting and staff meeting, and we were notified last week that our FIP was funded, which is awesome. That means up to 12 million. Our official request from OWEB is 8 million over the next 6 years. That can bump up or down depending on other opportunities that come up from our 6-year plan we put together. But that 8 million will help us leverage a lot more, probably up to 8 million more money from infrastructure package, from NOAA funding, from all these different opportunities. Now that we have a secured chunk of money from OWEB, that helps us go get more money, and money begets more money in our world, and that'll help us do a lot of work in the Yaquina and Alsea estuaries. Trevor mentioned the strategic plan, and that's on the docket for tonight for the board to discuss. We started that process to really kind of focus in on a 5-year plan for the council. Started that process in May. We're kind of taking a step back as we work on our busy summer season, and we'll kick that up again in October to take the next steps after our board works through the approval of that tonight. So real briefly, this is our FIP, our focused investment, the restoring resilience in 2 estuaries, threefold. Project type 1 is the kind of work we've done in the Yaquina at our Y27 site, and the kind of work we're doing at Lower Drift Creek in the Siletz, and that's tidal marsh restoration in areas within existing tidal range. So dike removal or dike lowering, tide gate removal or improvement, that type of work to kind of get salt water back where it used to be and where it wants to be, and restoring the habitat around that. Type 2 is protecting what's left of that spruce and shrub forested tidal wetland, again down to 6% of what it used to be. And the ecotype is really important for fish and a lot of other species. So protecting through acquisition or conservation easement, and doing restoration like we're doing already started in Pool Slough. And then type 3, I'm getting lag. Type 3 is the slant or migration zone, more forward looking, relying on this modeling to know where these future tidal wetlands are going to be, and doing work now to build resilience to that sea level rise and climate change. And just to give you a quick little glance here at what it looks like, this is what a lot of these future tidal wetlands look like. There's a stream running in the distance that's tidal there. This is Wright Creek, Pool Slough. A lot of these future tidal wetland areas there are reed canary grass or other non-native species, monocultures where nothing else can kind of grow up through that. And we're really striving to make them look more like this. Again, messy. There's a big nurse log that's mossed over. There's spruce growing out of it now, shrubs growing to the left there, and kind of just getting a little more complexity, not just in the stream, but in these marshes, and restoring that shrub and spruce tidal wetland type ecotype. Last 2 slides. just a glimpse at the Alsea estuary and where we want to work. All these opportunities total about 307 acres. Some of them, more ready to go than others. We're working in Bayview Oxbow with the Wetlands Conservancy. We're working in Drift Bend, lower end of Drift Creek with the Forest Service. And then a lot of these kind of little pocket wetlands and other areas along the Alsea. Same thing for the Equina, working where we can, looking to acquire property where we can, where there's willing sellers, working in Pool Slough, a pretty intact system, and kind of working all the way upstream and then even further than the tide gets right now, looking at these future tidal wetlands. So I knew I'd go a little bit longer than my test run. Sorry. I can just talk about this stuff kind of all day, and I usually do. But thank you for coming tonight. We will be able to answer any questions. So if you have any, throw them in the text box. Obviously, we love to get everyone involved that's interested. We're a 501c3, so you can donate. Those make a huge difference. Donations to the council, obviously tax deductible. Volunteer, come out and help. Get on our volunteer list there. You can email Tom, Trevor, or myself. We have a tech team. If you're an agency professional and have input and want to help us design our projects, participate in our tech team. Y'all are already doing that next one. You're attending the council community meeting, and we appreciate you being here for that. And if you're interested in helping and don't quite know how, give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll find a way to fit you in. There's obviously plenty of work to do, and more hands the merrier. So come on out, and thank you for listening. Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Nice work, Evan.
Thank you much. That was a lot of talking, and I apologize.
No, that was great. We appreciate it. I mean, as usual, when you go over projects in detail, even though I talk with you almost every day, I learn new things. And so I always appreciate sitting in on this kind of thing. We did get a couple of questions that I can pass on, but if anybody else has anything, now is a good time to throw it in the chat box and see if you can stump Evan about some of this stuff. So Susan asks, if sea levels rise, but precipitation substantially decreases and or droughts become more frequent, what may happen with these estuaries? Will spruce marshlands survive? Will the estuary water become more saline higher up in the estuary? Any ideas?
That's a real good question, Susan. So essentially, I'm not going to claim to know everything that's going to happen. What we know, we're pretty certain sea level rise is happening. It's already happening. We have these estimates of how much it's going to happen. Trying to get a mixed signal on the future of precipitation. Some models say more persistent drought in the summer, but some models also say bigger storms, flashier flows in the winter. So that's kind of so many unknowns. It's hard to do, and it's something us in the restoration community have struggled with. And certainly my 15 years I've been working in restoration is do we design for what's there now, current conditions? Do we design for that past condition? Do we design for this future condition that we're expecting, or do we design for something in between all of that? And it's hard. We don't know all the answers. We're relying on models, and models are only as good as your inputs and your data that you put into those models. And essentially what we're trying to do is, with all those unknowns, we don't claim to have all the answers and know exactly what to do. What we're trying to do is build resilience and build these resilient ecosystems that are biodiverse, that have a lot of diversity in the plants and the animals and everything that use them, and essentially hedging our bets. We're going to throw everything at it, make it as complex and kind of long lasting as we can, and then we're in some essence kind of hoping that it's going to survive whatever comes at it. So all those questions that you asked and all the kind of different mechanism of what's going to happen is stuff that we're working on every day, and working with scientists who are studying this, and The answer really to get to it is we don't know. So that what we're trying to do is just build these intact systems or store these systems, set them up to be resilient to whatever's coming next.
I think that was a good answer. And I realized the second input was not a question. It was just some accolades. Very impressive, great, positive projects with measurable results. Lots of work well done, which definitely is fair to direct primarily at Evan and his making stuff happen.
It's all of us, Trevor. It's all of us and all of our partners.
I don't know about me, but the partnership thing, yeah, for sure. Anybody else want to chime in?
Anybody awake out there? Tom, what's it looking like on YouTube?
Oh yeah, good question.
It's quiet on the YouTube front. We got a couple people watching, but no questions yet.
All right. Thank you. Good point. All right.
Well, surprised you got off the hook pretty easy here, seems like.
I don't mind that. Well, yeah, I think we'll just wrap it up there. I'm good with that.
More likely you just covered everything so thoroughly that people are like, that's plenty.
That's enough. Enough. Please stop. Great. Cool. Well, thank you, everybody. We'll take a quick little break here. I'll drink some more water, and we'll get back together for our board meeting. And again, everyone's welcome to stay for that. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and hope you have a good evening.
Yeah, and I'm sure if you want, you can use your reaction to give Evan some applause. Oh, there's thumbs up.
Thanks, Brandon.
Whatever. we know you're giving them thumbs up and claps. So nice work, Evan. See you in a little bit.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.